welcome everyone to this episode of Freedom Hub's Working Group. I'm your host, Jeff Cantor, along with Charles Frohman. We're sponsored by the Marketplace for Health, Wealth, and Freedom, and we are the Disruptors Intersection. We're going to certainly cover that same turf once again today. This is a historical event invariably, so we are recording all of these for posterity. We also have an additional show that we do evenings, so we'd certainly like you to take a look, see, and participate, become a subscriber. Let's take a look. We've got two ways to get to the exact same website, the long version and the short one. When you get there, there's an awful lot that you can take a look at between all these drop downs. We have a screen for the webinars, which we'll come back to. But then once the webinar is over, usually there's things you're going to want to do where the problem is persisting. So here we have the continuing the conversation page where you can connect with speakers from past episodes and kind of help further the cause. And this goes back for quite a ways, and I'll show you the archive here. Now, under the freedom tab, though, we've got Fighting for Freedom, and this is all the people we tend to try to showcase. We've got action items at the top, and then a breakout of all these different freedom organizations for you to be aware of and to participate in. And in the marketplace, we're trying to make sure we've got some key products and services that are really attuned to the situation we find ourselves in today. So here's a good thing with vaccines and masks as a good example. So we're kind of right there already. Now, if we come back to the home and you see the webinar tab, let's go back there a quick minute, because here's where we get into what we're doing here today. So we've got a couple that take place, the one now and then one in the evening. And then lo and behold, down here near the bottom is your chance to click on the link and take a look at some of these past ones. We always post them over the weekend, so Monday morning, the current one is always up there. We had Roger Stone the other day, which was a great one, quite an entertaining and interesting situation he's in the midst of. But let's find out what we're up to today, and I'm going to let Charles do the honors here as we introduce today's guests.
Thanks, Jeff, and welcome, Paul. It's a pleasure to finally schedule Paul to kind of tell us his deal, because Jeff and I have spoken with him off and on over the past couple of years as Jeff and I got featured in Forbes for taking on the health insurance companies and making cash shopping patients. We've attracted a lot of entrepreneurs who are disrupting markets in their own way. And as someone who has taught yoga, some style of it, and I've helped John Mackey at Whole Foods start conscious capitalism, the topic of today has always been important to me. Conscious capitalism, social entrepreneurship, and it's timely also because everyone, especially those up top in control, are talking about the new normal and the great reset, and even people who would otherwise want a return to the old normal, they want more conscious businesses. And so many of us who have lost our jobs and livelihoods because of the lockdown, we want to have good advice on how to rebuild in an ethical way. I mean, I think it's inherent in all of us to always want to build a better world and make money while doing good. Paul runs FeedOM. Take out the R from freedom. You have FeedOM. And you'll notice in there the two syllables feed and feed is there, I guess, because we got to know Paul a couple of years ago as a vegetarian chef for the world. He had a world hunger feeding program, a great charity, using really healthy food. And Om, I guess, stems from his affinity for yoga, and he has a book, Food Yoga. He has several books. And he's a coach, a health coach, a food coach, obviously, because he makes meals for the world's poor. And I saw a post of his at LinkedIn recently about the skyrocketing hunger stemming from the pandemic lockdowns. So this is a timely topic. We all want to get our lives back together in whatever the new normal is. And a conscious way to do capitalism is always a good idea to discuss. So that's our intro, Jeff.
All right, good. I don't know if we'll get to be able to call it a new normal. We'll have to probably pull one of the letters out of the word normal like you've done, and that'll be what we're doing. Go ahead, Paul. I'm taking the screen over to you.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. I'll just expand this 1 minute. So my background is 37 years as a humanitarian, and I decided to seed that into a new social enterprise called FeedOM, which is essentially leveraging the cost efficiency of this food relief program and bringing it to the marketplace, to the conscious marketplace, as an opportunity for caring business owners to give back and get something back themselves. And so that's what this talk's all about. So the title of the presentation is How to Make a Measurable Social Impact. And the key word there is measurable, because everybody wants to do good. And you see there's quite a lot of companies that are supposedly giving back, giving a percentage of their profits to this charity or another charity. But who's measuring it? So one thing to keep in mind in terms of business strategy is the fact that we live in a very different world now, and even pre-pandemic, this shift was happening, um, particularly with the Gen Z population. Most consumers today are demanding the companies give back. In fact, I think it's 84%, but in fact, 71% of Gen Z say they'll even switch brands if a company is giving back and another company is not. So if they see two coffees and one is actually giving back to the community, has a charitable cause attached to their business, they'll prefer that brand than the other brand. And that's just a fact. So we have to keep that in mind now when we're developing our marketing strategies. So, is your company giving back? So that's the first question you need to ask. And as I said, 84% of consumers now are actually demanding that companies do something. They actually give back in some form. So 73%, according to research by Mintel, and they study this very carefully. There's a tremendous article written by them. You can research that online, Mintel. 73% of a company's charitable giving affects the Americans' purchase decisions. So that's a huge number when you think about it. Tom Shoes comes to mind as an example, a very famous example of a company that decided to make cause marketing the mainstay, like the real thrust of their marketing efforts. And because of that, they became super famous. They sold a lot of shoes. And to this day, and I think they started that initiative maybe 20 years ago. To this day, they're pretty much come to mind when you think of cause marketing. So cause marketing equals more sales. That's just a fact of doing business today. Caring consumers, conscious consumers, they expect companies to share some of their profits and make good, to do something positive with their money, not simply just increase their stock price. So for the foreseeable future, for the next 10, 20 years, based on projections, cause marketing will continue to translate into increased sales. So the question to ask, and this is what, when we talk about, a company having a good CSR initiative or a good environmental policy in place, if you dig deep, sometimes you'll find that those companies are not really living up to the standards that they advocate for. And so there's a kind of greenwashing. So this also happens in the cause marketing space, where a company will say that they're giving back, but what actually happens to those donations that they give those charities? When a company says they give 1% to save the rainforest, how many trees were planted? How much money went into the pocket of the president of that charity? No one's asking that question. But we did ask that question, and that's why we decided to come up with a really, really powerful solution. So the new social enterprise is called FeedOM, and OM, yes, it is a sort of an homage to my spiritual background and my work with Food for Life Global. But in this case, OM actually stands for Output Measurable. So it's actually an acronym. So to address this issue of not measuring social output, we founded FeedOM, which is your CSR success partner, and we license what we call the OM Guarantee certification. So this is what it looks like: Output Measurable Guarantee, and it's certified. So this is our mission. FeedOM's mission is to help socially responsible and conscious companies and consumers participate participate in a mutually beneficial, that's a key word, mutually beneficial, output measurable, humanitarian effort to end child hunger, animal abuse, and to remedy the adverse effects of deforestation. So that's our mission. 3 social outputs: animals, children, and the earth. Feeding rescued animals, planting trees, and feeding needy children. Each one of them are measurable. You can actually know how many kids were fed, how many animals were fed, and how many trees were planted. So it's very clear. So as I mentioned, OM stands for output measurable. So what we offer is the most cost-efficient way for companies to make a positive social impact that is not only measurable but certified. So that's the key thing. It's cost efficient and it's certified. So you actually have something that you can prove your social impact. So how much does it cost? And this is really, really interesting. And this is sort of an unbeatable offer, to be honest with you. Each OM guarantee only costs 25 cents. It's quite astonishing. So literally for 25 cents, we guarantee that a needy child will get a freshly cooked vegan meal, a rescued animal will be fed, or a tree will be planted. And that's just absolutely amazing. And the only way we can do that is by working with very cost efficient, uh, um, very well run nonprofits. So transparency is important, and therefore each transaction that takes place in the FeedOM kindness ecosystem is captured in the EOS blockchain to ensure the integrity of the purchase and the deliverable. So that's key. Tax benefits is another interesting point here. Typically, when you make a donation, depending on the state laws, you can deduct a certain amount of that donation to that charity. The other thing too is the charity has to be based in your country. With FeedOM as a social enterprise, you're not actually making a donation, you're purchasing a digital asset. So therefore you can categorize that investment as advertisement, and it crosses borders. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can be in Israel, in Africa, in Russia. You're purchasing a digital asset. The investment is an advertising cost, and therefore you can write it off 100%. So it's actually better from a tax standpoint as well. So measurable cause marketing essentially is combining your corporate social responsibility with a measurable cause marketing strategy, and that delivers a clear message of integrity. And that's a really, really important point. A clear message of integrity to your customers, which will build customer loyalty, make them very happy to do business with you. So once you decide to go down this path, and you're crazy if you don't, because that's really where the consumers are moving, this is where their expectations are, you need to tell your customers about it. So retailers who use social causes as part of their brand ethos need to find ways to inspire their customers by integrating this caring message, whatever that message is pertaining to your type of product or service you're offering. You need to include that in all your promotional channels. So these are 7 things you can do to promote your CSR. Banners, sell by giving, cause campaigns, social update emails, welcome messages, post-purchase, and cart abandonment. And I'm going to explain each one of them. So banners, including a banner that reinforces your measurable cause marketing in every email sent. So in other words, you could put it on the signature of your email, and of course in the footer or the header of your website. Very simple, very easy to do. Sell by giving. Run the occasional campaign focused on the cause rather than just selling products. For example, this is a really good example. Boxed water, which I think most people know about. It's the water that is actually in a cardboard box, wax cardboard box. They promoted ways to help plant trees to combat the California wildfires, all while generating social engagement. So in other words, instead of just talking about the water, they focused on the actual cause in their marketing. Cause campaigns, so promotional campaigns that tie in the social good of your company, can be a great way to drive sales. So Tom's is another example, and they featured limited edition shoes based on a partnership with Save the Children. So think of all of the holidays you can take advantage of for your giving campaigns. So cause campaigns is very, very effective. Social update emails, Companies with loyalty programs often send loyalty points updates to their customers. And so there's no reason why brands aligned with social causes shouldn't do the same. So you need to showcase the progress your company has made because of your customers' purchase. That's very, very important. So make them feel part of the actual solution. Make sure you make it clear to them that it's because of their investment in your company that X number of trees are planted, X number of kids get a meal, or animals are helped, or whatever that is. Welcome messages are also important. Since social good is a significant component of your brand, don't forget to include this information in your welcome message on your website and also to your new subscribers. So when someone subscribes, rather than just saying, hey, welcome to our mailing list, explain to them what they're getting into and how they're joining your tribe is going to make a positive impact in the world, specifically by this, or that. So create content that proudly shares this message and informs them why they should align with your brand. So build a tribe mentality, build a fan base, not simply a customer base. Post-purchase, don't let your cause messaging end once the purchase has been made. So now is your opportunity to reinforce why the customer should feel good about their purchase and your brand. Consider putting the message on your company purchase receipt and showcase what their purchase has done. And I'll give you a good example of that. So my nonprofit Food for Life Global, we started an online shop, and we work with a third-party supplier fulfillment service called Printify. So basically, we created these designs, we upload them to the system, and then we sell these shirts, hoodies, and things like that. The key thing, though, the key difference is that we make it clear on every single product page. We say, with this purchase, you feed 50 children. And the way we're able to do that is we make sure there's enough profit built into the sale, and 100% of that profit goes to feeding 50 children. And that's quite unique and such a powerful message. When you buy a t-shirt from us, you not only get a great t-shirt, it's organic or pure cotton, and it's got a great message, but you feed 50 kids. Cart abandonment, that's something which is often forgotten, but a very powerful way to engage people. When a customer is close to making the purchase, you shouldn't hesitate to use creative tactics to get them to cross the finish line, like using a sense of urgency, discounts, and fear of loss. But for socially conscious companies or consumers, this can also be a social responsibility in how, by purchasing your product or service, they'll be making a positive social impact, like feeding children, rescued animals, or planting a tree. So at the last stage, when they're just about to abandon that cart, you can remind them of what their impact will make if they make that purchase. So how to get your brand OM Guarantee certified, and we admit that this is quite a unique offering. There's nothing like it in the marketplace today. It's extremely cost efficient. We take care of all the hassle, and it's very easy to participate. So these are the 5 easy steps to get started. You can self-certify your CSR eligibility. So you would basically go to our site to register your company. You answer a few questions, which will confirm to us that you are a responsible company. Register your company. Purchase as many OM guarantee credits as you would like, based on your marketing budget. You can place your custom code, your OM Guarantee custom code, on your website. That will pull in the OM Guarantee certification to your website. And then you can also place the OM Guarantee QR code that is also custom generated on your packaging or your marketing materials. And that will take your customers to the company page on our website confirming your impact. And I can show you an example of that right now, of how that would work, just before we finish up here. I'll give you an example of a company that is OM Guarantee certified. I'll just close this down. Here is a company, it's a vegan baking company. It's called Coconut Whisk. And Coconut Whisk is, selling vegan baking products. They have a social mission page. If we go to this social mission page, you'll see This actually loaded from our database. They put the code here and it loaded the certification from our database. So we control the certification. So if a company breaks the rules in some way, we can turn off that certification. So we only work with good companies. They have to prove that they're a responsible company. When you click on this QR code or you scan it, if you have a scanner on your phone, it will take the customer. So if that QR code was on a package or something, it will take the customer to the company profile page on the Om Guarantee website, displaying the certification in real time. This is their certification, 900 children fed, 500 animals fed. It's time stamped. And then not only that, we can click on the blockchain for verification, and all the transactions that company has made have been captured in the blockchain. So it's provable and transparent, and your customers can feel confident that your company is really giving back and giving back in a measurable way. So that's the end of the presentation. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Very good. And so just to clarify, is this for both nonprofits and for-profit companies as well?
This is really for profit companies that have a product or service that they would like to align with a cause and, and give back in a measurable way.
Do you help them find a viable cause? Because I'm going to assume you think something's a cause, and meanwhile, like you said, 80% of the money's going to administrative costs. Do you help the person or the company
Exactly.
find a cause worth giving to that matches up to your quality guarantee?
Yeah, so we do have charity partners that we work with. So we've already vetted those charity partners, and the focus what we're focusing on, Jeff, is that an actual output. So that's feeding a kid, planting a tree, or feeding a rescued animal. So we're not focusing on a specific charity like, okay, let us find a charity that matches your cause. No, we want to match the actual output to the business. So for example, say for example, a company is selling recycled clothing or some recycled product. It would be more appropriate for them to align their mission or to align their company with a cause of planting trees, because that would sort of match with the mission of caring for the environment and so on. And similarly, say a vegan baking company or a vegan restaurant, it would be more appropriate for them to align their business with feeding needy children. So we've identified three causes, which are all measurable, and then we guarantee that those outputs take place for an investment of 25 cents, which is quite amazing.
It really is. Charles, I see your hand is up.
It is, Jeff, and great presentation, Paul. It seems that would be a really good thing for any kind of entrepreneur post-COVID to immediately latch on to make some money by doing good. But when you try to test the company's worthiness for your own guarantee and certification, how would you know that they're undeserving, particularly with such a subjective dynamic? Yeah. I know when John Mackey debated Milton Friedman on conscious capitalism, I think Milton Friedman or someone on his side was saying all capitalism is conscious because by trading money for a good, you've both benefited. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, so we decided we didn't want to get into sort of policing these companies, because that would just take away from the focus of the business of actually providing the social output. So what we decided to do is set up a self-certification process. And so we have an OMG standards page where we align ourselves with the various standards of the industry: vegan standard, animal welfare standard, leaping bunny standard, environmental protection standard, equal opportunity standard, international labor standard on child labor. So based on the industry sector, we decided to set a benchmark. So for the auto industry, you don't have to be vegan, because that would be ridiculous. But what we do say is you have to at least have an equal opportunity policy and an environmental policy. In other words, you have to show us that you're a decent company and you're trying to do good, you're trying to leave, you know, a good impression on the world. So, however, with the restaurants do have to be vegan. So the food sector has to be vegan. The leisure industry or software and electronics, no child labor. So we, depending on the industry sector, we define, so this is the apparel industry, equal opportunity, no child labor, vegan, and environmental. So it's a much higher standard for the apparel industry. So depending on the sector, they have to check a box to say, yes, we do follow these standards. If we find out later that they don't follow those standards, we can turn the certification off because we control the certification.
To Charles' point, how are you
And
able
that's how
to
that,
verify if they are in fact vegan? Maybe they just check the box and they really aren't, and figure they'll never know.
yeah. So initially, obviously, we'll just take it on their word. But if we, if we dig deep, we find out, we get reports back from customers, then we'll get back to them and say, hey, you said that you're vegan, but you're not, and this and that.
Hmm.
We can't certify that because it would be counterproductive, particularly with the vegan one, because if we're providing vegan meals to needy children, there's no way that we could certify, for example, a Big Mac. Even if McDonald's approached us and said, hey, Paul, we want to give you $1 million. We want to buy $1 million worth of credits. We don't want their money because it's counterproductive to the integrity of the actual, what the brand stands for, what the
Right,
certification stands for.
right. Understandable on that front. Great. Well, any other questions, please raise your hand for sure. Now, so what kind of spawned this? I mean, in terms of, everybody doing this give back, why did you suddenly feel that there was a need to do this?
Identify, being in the, the food relief business for most of my life, I've traveled to 70 countries. I've been to 3 war zones. I've cooked for presidents, and I've fed the poor, the most impoverished people in the world. So I've had a very real variety of experiences, and I realize that there are a lot of people in the business industry that really do want to, they're really caring and they want to do something positive. And I basically thought, well, let me provide an easy way for them to do that, and not just an easy way, but an affordable way, and a way which is measurable. That's the key thing. It's a measurable output. That's what the OM is all about. And that's what's really missing. To our knowledge, and maybe I'm wrong, there's nothing like this in the marketplace at the time being. We're the only ones in this space.
Yeah, you're right. I've never seen anything. Plus, the fact that using that blockchain is that solid verification. That's really fantastic twist. Charles, I see you got your hand again there.
Yes, Paul, in your years of feeding the world, talk about that LinkedIn post you had recently about the lockdown exacerbation of hunger worldwide, and how your charity has responded to what I guess would be an increased demand for charitable efforts like yours and other groups that are feeding the poor.
Yeah, so up until the pandemic, the going number, which obviously is an estimate because it's nearly impossible to get an absolutely accurate number. The going number of people that go to bed hungry every night is around 840 million people, which is outrageous, right? 840 million people. That's about 10% of the population. Um, they go to bed hungry. Either they're malnourished or they don't get enough food. And as a result of that, that leads to poor health, which leads to disease, or weak body, and then they catch a disease or they get a virus or whatever, and they die. The worst case, or it could be just they're limited in their ability to grow healthy in physically and mentally. So a lot of these people, they remain in a poverty situation because their brain even doesn't develop properly because of malnutrition. They don't develop a very powerful brain capacity, and as a result, they can never like escape that cycle. So it's a really horrible situation. So that was before the pandemic. Now with the pandemic, it's over 1 billion people. There are way more people now being impacted by malnutrition and hunger because of the lockdown, because of the breakdown of the food systems of the world. It's now over 1 billion people. So we're talking 12 to 15%, which is really crazy. And that's not going to go away soon. I mean, once you create a monster like that, you can't just turn that around. It could take another 10 years before we, scale these numbers back. So it's a real problem.
If
And
I
in
could,
terms of our response to that, you can see on the screen there that we actually have a ticker tape of the actual meals going out from Food for Life affiliates. We have over 200 affiliates in 60 countries, and to date, this is an estimate. I I, I grant that. However, we believe it's a conservative estimate. So based on our conservative estimate, our affiliates have served 7 billion meals and counting to date. So we're doing our best to make a difference, to change world hunger. And not only that, what makes us really different in this space is we're not simply just filling bellies. We have a philosophy that food is the great carrier of intention. It is the great communicator. That food, when it is prepared with a loving intention, it can not only nourish the body, but nourish the mind and spirit as well. So it can actually shift consciousness. So we believe that's very, very important. And therefore, that's why we are plant based and we prepare the meals with a good consciousness in very highly, very, very hygienic kitchens. And we serve directly to the public. There's no third party, and it's freshly cooked that morning. It's not frozen. It's not prepackaged or anything. It's cooked that morning and delivered directly to the needy people. Because of that, we're not only feeding bellies, but we're making a difference in the mind and consciousness of millions of people every day.
Jeff, if I could follow up on that,
Please do.
given your connection to the world's poor directly or through your affiliates, I'm sure you see some of the politics around the charitable efforts. And I'm getting back to COVID and some of the international players in public health who seem to be redefining public health to be, modern, certain types of therapeutics of a preventive nature versus clean water, sanitation, that kind of thing.
Right.
Have you ever looked into that, where so many people think health comes from a needle versus other traditional public health advocates who say, no, what the poor need is clean water, sanitation?
Right. Yeah.
Or do you have you
And
seen
these
any of that
people are
kind of
getting
play out?
silenced. Yeah, I know where you're going with this, and those people that are speaking those things are getting silenced because of the nature of the world we live in today, with corporations who have a very selfish vested interest in their own profits, are pushing certain agendas, certain narratives, and controlling the public space, like your Facebook and the Googles and things like that. And no one's talking about the fact that with any disease, the best thing you can do is build your immunity. And how do you build your immunity? Fresh water, as you said, fresh plant-based, like a healthy diet, exercise, breathing. All of these things are way more effective in counteracting things like COVID-19 and other very dangerous diseases. But no one's talking about it. And if you do bring that up, it's like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, or that's not based on science. It's crazy how much control these corporations have over the narrative, and it's really bad. And we certainly don't fall into that category, and we feel like we're very unique in our messaging. We're very consistent. We're certainly not promoting these artificial remedies, which have been pushed at the expense of civil liberty. It's crazy.
It's interesting what you're describing, and obviously it's pretty admirable what you're doing in this regard, and the magnitude is pretty impressive. But you're sitting in that catbird seat, so you see all these conflicting interests, and everything is trying to address this particular issue, this hunger issue. What's really the real fix? Because obviously the planet can produce the food. What would we do to like not have to have you even be in business anymore? How can we fix it once and for all? What is that solution? Whether we can do it or not, because political constraints prevent it. But what was to be the fix? You've been sitting here long enough.
Yeah, so and it's a very good question, Jeff. And I've meditated on this for years, and I came up with a conclusion, an answer, and it hasn't changed in the last 30 years, and that is the World Food Program, which is most famous as being, the United Nations main arm for addressing world hunger. They typically have like international forums every 10 to 15 years, and then they'll set policy and so on, like the Millennium Development Goals and so on. So at one of their forums, which took place in Rome, I think it was in 1996, the key message or the theme of the actual conference was hunger in a world of plenty. So they were genuinely asking the question, how is it, just like you offered, how is it that people are going hungry when there's so much food in the world? I mean, the world has the capacity, literally, and this was 20 years ago. It even has more capacity now to feed 3 times the population with food technology and so on. It's incredible what we can do, and yet still there's hungry people. So they were asking that question. It was a very genuine, sincere question, and they came up with the answer. The answer was because of inequitable distribution, and that's a reasonable answer. But we would ask the same. We would actually ask the next question, which would be the obvious question, which would be, well, why is there inequitable distribution? And the answer to that is because of a mentality that keeps us separate as a global family. In other words, we're not seeing each other as a global family, as equal residents of this earth, and therefore, in other words, like a global family, seeing each other as brother and sister. And because of that, we don't have a tendency to share the resources of the world, because we don't see ourselves as brother and sister. Where there's all these narratives which are dividing us: black, white, yellow, Republican, Democrat, this or that. I mean, there's all these different ways in which people, African American, German, Israeli, whatever, all of these labels which are keeping us separate and not seeing ourselves as a global family. You can take that one step further and say that we're all spiritual brothers and sisters. We're all souls. The body is simply a vehicle. That's another level. But even if you just look at it on a mundane way as a global family, that alone can give you the same answer. And that is that we should see ourselves as a global family, and we should share the resources. When there's a lack, we should try to fill that need. Not that we don't promote the importance of free capitalism and people getting ahead and making a bit more money than the next person. I'm not promoting communism, that's for sure. But at the same time, when we see a need, even if we saw a need within our own immediate family, if our brother or sister was hungry, we wouldn't tolerate them going without food. So in the same way, we should develop that sort of global caring mentality. And that's what we promote at Food for Life Global. And our theme, or our tagline for the charity is uniting the world through pure food. So the mission for the charity is creating peace and prosperity in the world through the liberal distribution of plant-based meals prepared with loving intention. And we believe that is the solution to world hunger, using food as the great communicator, the great uniter of the world, using food as a way to bring the world together around a proverbial global dinner table, sitting down together, eating a feast as a family. That's our main message. The fact that we're the most cost efficient, effective food relief in the world, that's great, but that's not what we pride ourselves on. What we pride ourselves on is this unique message of using food to promote unity and equality.
That was an excellent message. Part of the way further on what you're describing, since you're, largely using vegan as an approach, which is, there's no involvement with cattle and all the overhead and all of what that entails. Why is it that we just couldn't have those countries learn to grow the foods that are indigenous there, and this way they don't have to try to have equitable
Yeah.
distribution from other countries? Because everybody's going to kind of hoard. It's one thing for us in the United States to give somebody in Florida. We all live in the West Coast. We give money because it's like within our immediate family. Over the border, it's got to get pretty
Yeah.
bad, and then we'll give money. But we don't think about it on an everyday basis like we do locally. But why can't they just
Well,
grow different crops?
no, It's a very good point, and you're right. And these countries should be encouraged to grow their own food and develop actual crops which support their, sustains them. But what you have is corporate entities, evil, selfish corporate entities that come into these countries via international organizations like the World Bank. There are what's called economic hitmen, and you may have heard of a book to that label, Economic Hitman. It's written by John Perkins, and he was an economic hitman, literally like an economic assassin. And they go into these countries representing U.S. corporations uh, under the guise of a World Bank, economist, and they go in and they create these deals, and they enslave these countries into debt. They said, look, we'll give you $1 billion to build your roads, to build your infrastructure, to create schools and this and that. And the prime minister says, well, that sounds good to me. That's going to make me look really good. And of course, he gets a kickback. That's another aspect. And so he agrees to it. But what happens with that $1 billion? It doesn't actually go to the country. It goes back to US corporations who then come in and build that infrastructure. So the money actually never leaves the country. So then they build the infrastructure. They enslave this country through this debt of $1 billion in infrastructure costs, and then basically they're for the rest of time until they can pay off their debt, the U.S. corporations control them. That's the problem, and so until that stops, we won't have equitable distribution of resources, and we won't have a scenario like you're talking about where a country is actually growing produce for itself, for its own people, rather than exporting that produce because it has to, because it's enslaved to a particular corporation.
It's going to be a tough one to break, boy,
On
because we're
that,
so overfront, everything on top of that.
Jeff,
Go ahead, Charles.
on that point, to expand on that, Paul, as the country becomes in hawk to the international lenders for all these great goodies that the local kleptocrats can profit from, and get their fill and go to wherever they go to Geneva to retire. Then it's the big ad companies, right, that come in and
Yeah.
and buy the land up, and then plant their GMOs and giant cash crops, soybeans, cotton. So that crowds out the local food, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all part of it. That's what I was getting at. It's like, it's not, when I talk infrastructure, I'm talking like, they say, look, we're going to, create business. We're going to create employment for you. And what's that mean? It means we're going to bring our companies in and do what we do and basically use your land to supply our consumers in the West. And, so ultimately, instead of growing wheat and rice, they're growing sugar and tobacco and soybeans and whatever, which doesn't help them at all, other than it gives them some money, but it doesn't really help, the mass population. It maybe helps a few people in that country.
Yeah, that becomes the case exactly because they can point to X amount of jobs that got created and who collected
Yeah,
paychecks. But like you said, how many people? It doesn't help the country at large. It just helps that select few.
at large it doesn't. It
Okay.
maybe helps 5 or 10%.
Is
For
there?
the
Is
rest
there?
of
I
the
mean,
people, they
what you're
don't
doing.
control.
What you're doing is like a never-ending process type mentality. Are there any charities? Are anybody trying to like say, look, let's go do an end around. Let's just start building farms or something, and not try to go through these governmental entities and the like.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess that's where we need to be. In terms of a great reset, it's you know that's sort of where we need to be going, is changing systems like that, uh, breaking down these corporate um, tentacles, and where they're basically controlling every aspect of our lives, breaking them down and putting the power back in the hands of the people, the small farmers, so that they can take control of their lives and help their local people, more local economies. That's what's needed. And in terms of Food for Life's participation in that, I mean, obviously, we're good at what we do, and we can only do what we can do. We do promote, along with feeding people, we do have advocacy programs promoting self-sufficiency and growing your own food and that sort of thing. But we're not like the UN. If we were like the UN with the budget of the UN, we would increase our programs and obviously start to move in that direction as well,
Sure.
like
Well, at least,
empowering farmers and increasing that, increasing that sort of thing.
well, the nice thing is you're shining a light on the problem, but at the same time, you're ameliorating the situation concurrently than just standing there and screaming about, oh, there's this problem, but you're not really doing much other than just complaining. So that is pretty commendable for sure. So that's fantastic. Well, we got time for one last question here.
Jeff.
Yes.
In closing, Paul, so how can businesses contact you, and why would they contact you? And I guess clarify, this is for every market, every kind of business?
Every market on the planet. It will, depending on, as long as they can meet the benchmark set for each sector, so obviously as I mentioned, for the food sector, you have to be vegan. For the cosmetic sector, similarly vegan, no animal ingredients, no animal testing, that sort of thing. So we set a benchmark, and there's a lot of companies that meet those standards. Obviously, there's at least 50% are probably, I don't know what the number is, but it's a big number. That's all that we need to do. And we're happy to do business with them and provide them an opportunity to give back in a measurable way. Now, keep in mind, a company can go directly to Food for Life and they can donate to our charity. Say if you're a US company and you say, you know what, I just want to donate directly to the charity, that's fine too. And it's also 25 cents. So for $25, you can feed 100 kids. But if you go via the OM guarantee service and pay $5 on OM guarantee certifications, OM guarantee credits, you get the benefit of feeding 100 kids, same number, but you then also get a certification of a measurable social impact that you can then use to enhance the integrity of your brand, incentivize your customers to do business with you. And it's cross borders because it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you're purchasing a digital asset. It's not a donation to your local charity. So it's up to you what you would like to do.
With what you're describing there, if you're doing that guarantee route, is there do you sell it in blocks or increments, or how does a business buy that? Just $25 at a crack?
Yeah, the minimum is $25. So starting point, you have to purchase 100 credit to participate. So it's $25, which is nothing.
Not much.
We have companies that spend $2,500, so they'll feed 4,000 kids a month. We have a company that spends $4,000 a month and they'll feed 16,000 kids a month. So it's really up to their budget. So there's two ways they can participate. They can align the OM guarantee with a particular product or service, or they can just do it at a brand level. So in other words, if they don't have a big profit margin where they can afford 25 cents, say it's a really small product and the margins are really tight, so they can't really OM guarantee certify that particular product, they can just OM guarantee certify their brand. So the brand itself can say, you know what, we fed 100 kids, and that's fine too. So it's just really up to them how they would like to participate.
Well, it's nice that you've made it so flexible because you can start small, and as that company continues to grow, then they can step up to the plate even more, which is fantastic. Well, that was great. Well, we're going to definitely get the word around and have you be a big participant in that, continuing the conversation, because obviously this is a big problem and we really have a chance to help tackle it. So we're really excited you've been at the forefront of this for so long. Have you seen a lot of progress, or what do you feel like? Has it been worth your while? I mean, obviously it feels good helping all these people, but are we getting anywhere? Let's close it with that comment. Hopefully.
Yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of progress. I mean, people are definitely catching on to this message. As Charles mentioned earlier, and I actually wrote a book called Food Yoga, and in that book I clearly lay out what the philosophy of Food for Life is all about. It's not simply a food relief. We're trying to raise consciousness through food. So that's what Food Yoga is all about. And I definitely have seen a change. I mean, there's more conscious eating today. There's more conscious consumerism. Yes, the pandemic has sort of set us back a little bit, but at the same time, I see, we are making a positive impact. We're seeing, like some of the programs that we have, we feed children as young as 5 years old when they're just starting school, and we continue feeding them until they finish high school, and we see them graduate and go on to college. We basically fed them through their whole educational career. So that's a wonderful feeling, to see that.
Fantastic. Well, what a great way to end it. So thanks so much for being here today, Paul.
You're most welcome. I appreciate the opportunity.